And so many immigrants from Britain after 1945 nonetheless links with Britain weakened. In the 1949 the National Citizenship Act made Australians no longer citizens of the UK and colonies but citizens of Australia. Finally, in 1982, all appeals to British courts were ended, and the High Court of Australia was made the highest court of appeal. And meanwhile, in 1957, a treaty was made with Japan, and links with Asia became more important, as the treatment of indigenous people improved. And from 1959, Indigenous Australians were allowed welfare benefits, and after 1962, they were allowed to vote. In 1971, Indigenous Australians were included in the census for the first time. And from 1949 to 1974, the Great Civil Engineering Scheme was built the Snowy Mountain Hydroelectric Scheme as a plan was to collect water from melting snow in the Australian Alps and divert it through tunnels to drive hydroelectric power plant stations, as water would then flow into rivers and for irrigation. In over 25 years, 16 dams were built, 12 tunnels and 7 power stations, as workers from more than 13 nations toiled in the scheme. And on November 11th, 1975, the Governor General dismissed the Australian government, which caused much controversy, and after 1975, the period of growth and prosperity had come to an end for Australia. And for one thing, inflation rose, and furthermore, in the late 1970s, unemployment began to rise. In 1983, it had reached 10%, and it fell to about 6% in 1988, but began to rise again. And in 1977, a referendum advanced Australia Fair became the national anthem. And a turning point for Australian history came in 1992, when the Mabo judgment Indigenous Australians claimed that the island of Mare belonged to them, not to the Crown, and court finally overturned the doctrine of terra nullius, the idea that Australia did not belong to anybody when the Europeans arrived. And in 1993, the government passed the Native Title Bill to clarify rights to ownership of land. However, in 1993 came the Wick judgment, which said that even in the Queensland government leased land to pastoralists, the Indigenous Australians still had some rights to land as long as they did not interfere with the pastoralists' activities. In 1998, the government was forced to amend the 1993 Native Title Act as a symbol of reconciliation between the different peoples of Australia, and over 250,000 people walked across Sydney Harbour Bridge on 28th of May 2000. And today the population of Australia is about 23 million, and in 2006 it was estimated that the Indigenous population was about 500,000. And at the same time, when Europeans first arrived in Australia at the end of the 18th century, as employment was high in the 1990s, but at the beginning of the 21st century the situation had improved, as employment in Australia stood at about 5.2% in March 2012. However, by November of 2015, it had fallen to 5.8%, and today Australia is a prosperous country. And in 2008, Quinton Rice became the first woman to become Governor General of Australia, and in 2010, Julia Gillard became the first female Prime Minister of Australia. Yeah, that's history for you. Moving on to legends. As the Australian outback is home to many tall stories, and publicised as it is feral camels, more than 1 million at last count, but which are true, which are merely folklore rates. These is top of the 5 of the myths and legends vault. And first is a bunyip, and don't stray too close to the billabong, as you're unfamiliar to the sights of an alien environment. Early European settlers quickly took to the idea of a bunyip being a new creature to the be discovered and set out on a foolish attempt to find one of the hope in the hopes of fame and riches. As a very so-called Aboriginal tribes, this wasn't the case. The bunyip was a malevolent force that lurks at the bottom of creeks and billabongs, ready to devour anyone silly enough to wander down at the wrong time. At least it was used for like wayward children all. Like any other good folkloric tale, the bunyip legend has been fueled by substantial sightings and incompatible facts, as bunyips have been reported to have horses' manes, dogs' faces, flippers, fangs, tusks, one eye, two eyes, shaggy fur, short hair, horns, and to be variously as big as a horse and as small as a dog. And yeah, and some say the legend of the bunyip stems from Aboriginal ancestral memories of the Diprotodon australis, a three-horned tun bear, creature that was the biggest marsupial in existence before it came extinct about 40,000 years ago. And there's drop bears if take to Panadol to prepare for certain death. And we all know the joke. Yeah, as kind of like a punchline or that. Usually on some newly arrived tourist terrified of a country filled with man-eating sharks, killer crocs and venomous snakes. So what? So harm to add one more, even better, why not take out fluffiest creature and the snugglific koala and turn it into a monstrous widow maker with a taste for the sweet tangle of human flesh. And for those who didn't know the details, get up to speed and remember a few basic facts, and in case anyone with an accent asks, drop bears are related to koalas, although they're slightly darker with blood dripping fangs and hunt at night. And a website I got it from kind of suggested that British backpackers use Vegemite. It's made on the face so that it's effective deterrent for the drop bear. As like with Marmite, you love it or you hate it. Then there's a Great Island Sea, BYO boat, and going at every other continent with its salt has a huge and intricate internal river system. Early European settlers theorised that Australia must surely have one too, and since Australian rivers flowed inland, the question rang out, where was all the water being stored? There must be a giant Mediterranean-sized sea in the deep dark interior, and the assumption was so far great, but gave birth to dozens of failed expeditions into Australia's red centre on fruitless searches for water, and none more foolhardy than that mounted by Charles Sturt, who departed with civilization with 15 men on a boat, and instead became trapped for 6 months near Parinka in New South Wales and got as far as the Simpson Desert before giving up, broken and in temperatures so hot that the party led fell from their pencils and scurvy blackened skin fell from their mouths. As the search continues, but underground, as spectators are eternally drilling in the hope of finding another great artisan basin that something that could allow the desert to flourish with flowing water for generations to come. As the Great Inland Sea has inspired several books on the subject, like Thomas J. Marston's A Friend of Australia, which managed to contain maps, detailed advice on navigating the sea and rivers, and local knowledge of the interior, despite the fact that the author ever set foot on Australian soil. And yeah. Then the last one I'm briefly going to mention is the Lassiter's Reef, the Holy Grail of lost gold mines. as just before the 20th century, 17-year-old Harold Lassiter set foot on from Alice Springs in the WA Western Australia goldfields to make his fortune, and somewhere along the way he claims to have done so. And the only problem was he couldn't remember where he'd left it, and thus began the legend of Lassiter's Reef, a supposed 40-mile long gold-rich quartz stone outcrop somewhere in west of Alice. And since then many have wandered through the desert with visions of uncovering its vast riches, as Lassiter himself died some 30 years later on such a journey in 1931, which many have wasted countless hours of their own fortune and their sanity on the basis of a kid's tale. Some claim to have already found it, as Lutz Frankenfield, founder of Alice Springs Bay Ken Regatta, reckons he did so back in 1994, and he is just waiting to form a joint venture with a rights mining company. And recently in November 2008, Mutejulu, elder who recalls caring for Lassiter out in the desert before he perished, also passed away, severing what could be a final link to the lost reef of gold. And facing bankruptcy, the South Australian government funding Lassiter's last expedition, not because they thought he was right, but in hopes that the subsequent gold fever would see many of the unemployment leave Adelaide. And that's it, and I'll see you all tomorrow. In fact, no, I won't. I'll see you later for the news. Forgot for a moment. I'll see you all later for the news, and I'll see you tomorrow for 3 more countries and the news and any news from resits. And yeah, bye for now.